All right, we're ready to start the second session of the third day of the Bootstrap seminar. And we're going to spend just a very few minutes in here and then go into the next room. And they're going to see the two demonstrations. One that Dave Gardner in the back here will run that's sort of a little brother augment on running on DOS under Windows. And I'm interested in seeing it too, because I've just been hearing about it for the last 2 years. And then the other one is Alan Baumberger, who has a quite different version that he built and used extensively on an Amiga, on the multimedia kind of Amiga. And then since last summer he started saying, well, why didn't you transport it over to the Macintosh? So it's not, and he's done things differently to sort of match in with the Macintosh style. And also he and his friends who were using the Augment very heavily in the 80s, building a very large software project, and were very addicted to it. They sort of weren't part of the rest of the community as far as the range of facilities of Augment that they used, so he's implemented them somewhat differently and somewhat more limited, but the potential, with, since he can include graphics and the like, are very interesting, and the ways in which he's used different interfaces are very indicative. So that it seems educational for you people to talk to them, and I think for both parties it would be very interesting to have discussions. So they're each going to have half an hour to do that, and then later in the day during the breaks after lunch, etc., and the break, and even on in the evening some, that they'd be available for smaller talking and demo. And what I like to do now is two things. The afternoon, it's going to be a mix of things we talk to you about, and we'll have 4 to 6, I've lost count myself, of old grads, people who live near enough and still like to come and participate in the afternoon, the third day. So they'll show up for lunch, and so get acquainted with them. And most of them are going to stay through the afternoon to sort of be supportive participants in what we're doing. So in the afternoon you sort of stand ready to be processed, to be put into processes, because we'd really like to have you people try on the roles of doing some planning and proposing, and etc. in here. So there'll be roles in which people will do this to each other, and have some time in groups to thrash out in your group how your group would like to, play that role, be that role. And I'm pretty sure that something like that will make a big difference in sort of getting some more reality to some of these issues. So I'm hoping that'll be. So if we spend a little time now talking more about this launch step that we had just been talking about J5 and how we would propose sort of working with organizations that want to get going. And then I was telling you a little bit about, in Europe, the number of sort of incipient startups that potentially could be fostered if something really got started in this country. But then I had a really neat surprise that I found out that there was a group in France. There was a not-for-profit organization set up right across the border from Geneva, from Switzerland. And so I've got one of their handouts here that I can just point to right now, that just if people are interested in looking at this. So this is the name of the organization, is the Neurop Lab, and I don't know why they picked the name. But you can almost think of it as like the New Europe or the neural model of Europe. Anyway, so you get this. It's the European Center for Research, Experimentation and Learning for the Knowledge Age. And the kind of projects that they pursue, the addresses are down here that we can get to too, but they have very interesting sets of layouts here describing what they're doing. And so I changed my routing to come home to spend half a day and on into the night with these guys, and we managed to get ourselves mutually extremely excited because how complimentary it was that if we could get the kind of real focus on Kodiak and pilot or prototype kinds of hyperdocument systems that really could be used for pilots, they got things pushing that really could use that immensely, both for the way they'd operate their push and for the substance that they were trying to deal with. One of the pushes is is to connect with a bunch of business schools, graduate schools of business in Europe and in England, and that trying to help establish curricula in there that would prepare the business leaders that went on out for the kinds of information age things that they need to know about, but also to bring in information age ways to teach. See? And so you say we could bring in information age the way in which we support you. So they have a kind of B operations going on to the B schools. You heard about that. So anyway, it just plug in the bootstrapping idea, plug in the support system. So that 4 or 5 projects, it would just resonate like that very much. And when we even talked about the cost of getting a wide area prototype that could really work and add up something like maybe $1.5 million to do it, we're thinking, well, gee, they could probably go consider raising that kind of money. And I said, well, how about sharing it if something got started in the United States? Hey, yeah, good. And one of the principals is a Canadian, as a matter of fact, and is an acquaintance of Ezra's. So, anyway, the whole pursuit of it and everything just looked terrific. And we can leave this out if people want to look at it. And in the breaks, you might want to look at quite a few things that are out here that I just grabbed things to bring that are relevant, like the 2 books on intelligence systems that were up here. And somebody I saw back there, a book on a desk that looked interesting, but you just sort of think lots of relevant information in these things and in clippings and in magazines, journals. How does, in the end, a lot of that stuff gets sifted and integrated into a common culture in pursuits, in professional disciplines and the like. And what's going to have to emerge is a C and a B types of real professional pursuits that are serious. How is their stuff going to get integrated? And so it's a basic Kodiak process. So how can that be facilitated and how much important it is? So these are all sort of sitting here as examples. Like this one. This is Encyclopedia of World Problems and Human Potential. You think, what do you think about that? So you say, must be great big print with everything else like that, right? It's just a tremendous listing of
Do they have link references?
right, no. See, no, but you look at it, it says they really have, they started taking, but these are all kind of significant problems that different groups in the world are trying to focus on and move. The world-class problems and the number of them and the kind of organizations that are doing something. So you said, hey, look, if we ever get C and B things working, here are all these B things that are trying to go on a world-class scale. You know, is there any C? They don't have a C, like that. So you just say, look, if you want to elevate the sort of orientation about what a C community could be faced with, just come and take a look at this. Or if you want an example of a handbook. So in the end, you have to realize the kind of handbook a real C community would evolve after it was matured this would just be one little section of it, see, like that, so that we'd be oriented for a lot, real interesting problems. Okay, Ted.
Something has really bothered me, and I've been having this with Don about all this, and that is I'm looking at all that and most of what's here and realizing that most people don't read. And literally, I mean, they can read. Some people can read a lot more and have tolerance for it, but most executives, if I could get their attention, it would have to be in less than one page, and if that. And I think what's starting to happen now, and the reason that people are using so much more short video and other stuff is to address this problem. And given that this whole system and the orientation towards knowledge is based so heavily on the accumulation in the past of text and all of this, I'm wondering how this moves quickly into an age when you've got a lot of people who just don't have the tolerance to do what we used to do.
So are you talking about that as an immutable thing that we'd have to accommodate, or just another cultural issue that...
It's a paradigm problem.
Right. So that's the way I would look at it. I said, well, I don't see how our institutions, organizations can survive if something like that Kodiak process doesn't get more effective, and there's no way that people are going to be able to be effective at that if they have little tiny hunks of attention that they don't integrate into something larger. See, the people...
Video or multimedia.
No, I think that's
instead of just text or something like this would change.
We said all the media you want, and the basic things of we talked about how do you better connect to the equipment you do have and motivation, but that doesn't give much allowance for saying, well, if people just don't want to take the time, that's something that you can't cope with. But to be fair to our friends next door, we got a break in 5 seconds or something. So
I just make an observation about that was what I saw was the advantage or what the Augment program was bringing, was allowing you to find a piece of information without reading, without excessive reading. You were only doing productive reading.
Hey, Dave, I'm assuming you two decide who goes first.
Okay.
And each half an hour you police it yourself.
Okay. At 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I run into people all the time and say, where's your information retrieval? And you saw I got lost yesterday. It was sort of like if somebody rearranged your office and you start looking for something, well, it's not so there may be magic in the future in which something keeps you from getting lost, but the way you arrange it for doing your work. But the sweeping information retrieval, one of the intelligence items I can pop to is a description of a real news item that just came over, that Lotus has teamed up with another company so that they're integrating with Notes that other company's sweeping kind of retrieval possibilities. So the retrieval and then the right to what you want when you are, anyway, I'm getting off into too deep a topic there, but it is a different environment when you're living like this, and today's habits or dislikes have got to be shaken up and allowed to fit into a new environment. You guys go over and deploy yourself as efficiently as possible, as quickly as possible, and we'll see you after lunch.